What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Roman, and today we're going to talk about the story how I actually ended up with a 4-cylinder turbo BMW. Specifically, how I went from my V8 manual M5 to a 4-cylinder automatic BMW. So let me kind of back things up a little bit. About 4 years ago, I had an opportunity to pick up an 2003 Alpine White BMW M5 with caramel interior. Absolutely a beautiful car for a pretty good price, especially considering how much they're going for now. So I quickly, I wasn't looking for one, but this popped up and I was like, oh my God, these are super rare. I love white German cars, and I love my friend's E39 M5, so I was like, might as well, let's jump on it right now. So called the guy, made a deal over the phone to come look at it. Car was in Vegas. I live in San Diego, so we drove down, I believe like a day or two after, with the whole family and my buddy to come check out the car. Long story short, picked it up and I owned it for about 2 years. And our second child was in the way, and that's actually the reason I picked up the M5. So I wanted something with a little bit bigger back seat. At the time, I had a 2001 Audi S4, so that's like the twin turbo V6 model. Also in white. Absolutely love that car as well. Had some plans for it, but the back seat is pretty tiny, and so I sold that car, picked up the M5, and then moving forward about 2 years. Unfortunately, there's a lot of changes that happened, and finance-wise, it made sense for me, unfortunately, to do the adult thing and sell the M5. Yes, it's still sad. I'm still sad about it now, but my plan was, at least, I was going to be able to actually make a nice profit on the car. They've been going up in value. They've jumped up in value, like even more so recently. And but I was going to sell that car. I also at the time had a S6 Avant. Also loved that car. It's not an M5. It's not as fast. It's not as, it's not as much of a performance car, but it is still an amazing car. I mean, it's 340 horsepower. It is a super usable car, very comfortable for everything you wanted to do in it. But that was my other car. But those cars are, the values on those cars are not like M5 values. So my plan, I was going to keep the S6 is sort of my kind of whatever / project car, and pick up another car for cash that was more like daily, for everything, for all my work, all my business stuff, and for the road trip that was coming up. So I really wanted something that was kind of better on gas mileage, something that's not going to be horrible on maintenance, things like that. So, and I also really wanted some tech. Most of my cars are like, I would say like right around 2000, the year 2000. So the tech in those cars never, it's not great. I mean, my M3 had Bluetooth, but that kind of worked whenever it wanted to work, and it wasn't that great. So, so I wanted something with some toys in it for once. And I started looking around, and I would say the majority of what I was looking at, I don't want to sound like that guy, but I think a lot of people watching this show, this channel, are probably like me. You're enthusiasts. You like certain kinds of cars. You enjoy driving quite a bit. And, so like a Toyota Corolla or a Camry or a Honda Accord isn't as much sense as those cars make. They're extremely good cars. They're super reliable. They do make them with quite a bit of horsepower now, but they're not really driver cars. They rarely come in manuals. They're rarely come in rear-wheel drive. So it's, the ones I just listed never come in manual. Well, that's not 100% true, but they don't really come in manuals, and they've never, I don't think, came in rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive for that matter. So I was really looking into, again, I don't want to bash those cars because I'm not that person, but that's not what I was looking for. So I really was looking kind of into like TDI, like turbo diesel Audis or Volkswagens. Kind of like looked at those options. Really like the A3 TDI, My only problem was I used to have an A3. It's not that big of a car. It's actually, the back seat's really nice, but it's not that big of a car for a road trip, especially like with two kids. I have a dog. So we, like, as much as I like that car, I kind of like crossed it off my list. And so I was like kind of like looking around, and then eventually I kind of came to the conclusion that, I don't really want a front wheel drive car. Couldn't really find anything that was all wheel drive in TDI that kind of fit my budget and my needs. So started looking into other options, which was, I'm like, well, turbo diesel Audis are pretty good. What about diesel BMWs? And so I looked at the 335 and the 535D. Great cars. Only issue with the 335D at the time was this guy's weird. Was a E90, and the E90, I used to have an E90 328i, also a fantastic car, by the way. Very reliable, like really reliable for BMW. And unfortunately, again, they're not quite big enough for what I wanted. And the 535s were kind of out of my budget. So I sort of transitioned into, while I was looking at 335s, I saw F30s, and I was like, well, it's like, what are the F30s are getting for MPG? So I basically I started seeing, I checked out the mileage. I'm like, wow, that's really good. Like I can get a rear wheel drive BMW. I like BMWs. I'm used to BMWs. And so I'm still going to have a fun car, and I'm going to have something that still gets pretty decent gas mileage. And, like 335s and 328s, they're not particularly expensive to fix. Like, they're not like one-off engines. Like, they're not, there's not going to be some like hard to find parts, or their parts are going to be marked up because it's, an M model. So, then after looking at a bunch of F30s, I did want the 335 initially. I unfortunately realized that the 335 that was fitting into my budget was realistically a 2012. And because I looked at so many F30s, I really kind of started like putting certain things in my head, like, oh, I want the M Sport. I'd really want Astral Blue. I really want this. I really want that. So a 2012 335 didn't fit some of these criteria. And, I was just kind of like, you know what? Like, I drove the 328 once, like, as a loaner, the F30, and it was surprisingly quick. I didn't spend a whole lot of time with it. I basically just drove it from the dealership to my work and then drove it back at the end of the day. But it was pretty fun to drive. It was a base model. So I was like, you know what? Maybe I should. And it's like, and those cars kind of like are like barely like sort of like dipping right into my price range. So long story short, I found a car that you guys have seen already on this channel. It was actually located in Buffalo, which made it really interesting because I saw that car at least 3 times online and looked at the pictures. And I was like, yeah, I'm not buying a car in Buffalo. Like I said, I live in San Diego. I'm like completely cross country. And we're going to be actually taking a cross country trip to upstate New York, like 45 minutes away from Buffalo, because that's kind of where we're from, and that's where we have some family. So I was like, well, God, that doesn't make sense. Then we probably have to rent a car. And anyways, right? So I kept seeing it, but I was just like, I can't. Like, this doesn't really make sense for me to buy. So for the 4th time I looked at it, I saw that there was a free Carfax report, and I decided, like, you know what, might as well. I'm like, already looked this thing like 3-4 times anyway, so might as well just look at the Carfax report, see what it says. And to my surprise, the car, I'm guessing on the mileage specifically, but you'll kind of get the gist. Basically, it said up to 77,000 miles, the car has been in Southern California the entire time. That's like, there was no other entries that said it was outside of the state. Then at 78,000, it was listed for sale at the dealership in Buffalo where I was looking at it. And I was like, oh, so somebody maybe moved for a job or for whatever reason, had the car, trailered or delivered. Obviously, it wasn't driven from California to Buffalo in 1,000 miles. So And I was like, okay. So somebody must have traded it in, figured out that you can't just drive this car, you know, all the time in upstate New York. Trust me, you can't, or you shouldn't. You can, but you shouldn't. I guess that's the better way of saying it. You shouldn't do it. Rear-wheel drive car, fairly low to the ground, is going to get beat up pretty fast. So, I called him up, and I called my dad, who happens to be a mechanic who lives 45 minutes away. He takes the, he went to inspected the car, had him actually put it up in the lift, looked everything over. He's like, there's no problems with this car at all. It's clearly not a, East Coast car. There's no rust on here whatsoever. Like, it's not dirty. It's a California car. So the car wasn't perfect, don't get me wrong. There's some paint chips going on in the front. There was a couple of like little tiny dings, like one on the rear quarter panel, one on the driver door, I think. So, but nothing I didn't already know. And so I talked to the sales agent, made a good deal. They couldn't sell this car apparently either, because again, not a big seller up there, and they were going to send it to auction. So they made me a good deal. It was slightly under my budget, my max number, and my dad picked it up, drove it home, put it in the garage, and then we did end up actually renting a car, driving that across the country, dropping that off, and then taking that car all the way back to California. And I have to say, I was a little hesitant when I bought this car. I mean, I knew visually I liked it, and I've never really had a lot of time with it, but I spent quite a bit of time with it on the journey across the country. We went to several different spots like Yellowstone and things like that. So we spent a lot of time in the car, and I mean, the car was fantastic. I mean, the car was fully loaded. I put a roof box on top. I had 2 kids. I had a dog. I had my wife. We were packed to the brim, basically, because usually anytime we go back home, the kids leave with so much more stuff than they ever, we actually want them to. But, and the car was like flawless the whole time. And we were even like on some parts where like the roads are horrible, and like the car still drove great. We had no issues. It handles fantastic at speed. I think we averaged like 25 miles per gallon, which is impressive considering like I was not doing an average of 65, and we had a roof box, which, typically cuts off like 2 to 3 miles per gallon as is. And, really fell in love with the car, and I've been definitely happy with it. Dude, of course I miss my M5, but, the car was great. So, but, that's my story, how I ended up with a 4-cylinder turbo BMW, which I honestly probably never thought I would ever own. And I am really happy with it. Obviously, timing chain guides, it's been mentioned before in my videos. Look into that if you're going to buy one of these cars. But other than that, super solid for mine so far, knock on wood, obviously. And I did want to kind of bring something up. A lot of my videos are supposed to be sort of like about modifications and upgrading this car. I've had this weird ankle thing. It's like, honestly, it's been happening on and off for like 2 years, but it happened again about almost, I don't know, a month and a half ago, and then it sort of like relapsed. So it's just hard. It's been hard for me to walk, and it's hard for me to like squat down and do other things. And I thought I was like, after a month of limping around, it was like 99% gone, and then I accidentally like hooked my leg and sort of like redid everything again. And went to the doctors, all this stuff. But anyhow, we have some mods coming. I'm gonna say that the side skirt extensions is probably the one I'm most excited about. They were shipped today, so they were made and shipped out today from the East Coast. So hopefully by the week I should have those, and then those are going to be coming in the near future. And then there's also some other little things coming that I've been sort of just holding off on doing, because it just hasn't been an easy thing for me to do. But that's it, guys. Thank you for, please subscribe, please hit like, make a comment, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya.
Sometimes we forget why we're here. It's easy to fall off track. These help us remember